everyone, and thanks for joining us today. We're very excited for this webinar, as we know it's a very hot topic for a lot of you. Today we have with us Eric Dreshfield. He is a Salesforce Advocacy Manager at Aptus. He is the founder and event co-chair for Midwest Dreaming, the Southern Indiana Salesforce User Group Leader, and a Salesforce MVP. Wow, Eric, you really are busy. Eric will be presenting on the switch to Lightning today. And then on the Panaya side, we will have Stuart Bierig, our Director of Pre-Sales, who will then explain how Panaya can help you with customizing and managing changes in Lightning. I am Daniela, and I will be your moderator for today's presentation. Before we get started, I'd like to address some housekeeping issues. We have a packed audience, so all lines are muted for optimal sound quality. We will not be including a Q&A during this webinar, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the questions box, and we will get back to you via email. Please note that this session is being recorded. A link to the recording will be sent in a follow-up email. We're going to be running a couple of short polls during this webinar. You can answer by simply selecting the relevant answer. Before we move to Eric, I'm going to start with our first quick poll. So you should see it pop up on your screen in just a second, and you can choose one of the options. So the question is, where are you currently in your transition to Lightning? A, currently in discovery mode. B, plan to transition in the next 6 months. C, plan to transition in the later part of 2019. And D, sticking with what I have, no plans for Lightning just yet. So I'll give you all a couple of moments to fill in that answer before we move forward. All right, so we're seeing the poll results coming in. It looks like so far we have 44% of people saying that they are currently in the discovery mode of Lightning. And then the next second most popular option is that people are planning to transition in the next 6 months. That's 34% of the respondents. All right, guys, thank you very much for filling that out. So now I want to hand over the reins to our MVP, Eric. Eric, tell us what you know.
All right, thanks very much. So as Danielle said, I'm Eric Dreshfield. I am a Salesforce MVP, the advocacy manager at Aptus, and the guy who started Midwest Dreaming all the way back in 2011. And I also lead the Southern Indiana Salesforce User Group. So thanks everyone for being here. So what are we here to talk about today? We're really here to talk about Lightning and what you need to do to prepare for it. And the first thing that you need to do with that is to understand all the terminology. So we're going to cover some key terms right now. Lightning Experience. That is the new, modern, beautiful experience for users from Salesforce. It enables sales and service users, or the sales and service user experience has been completely redesigned to better support work and business processes that are done in the sales and service organizations. It's a very intuitive interface. It's a very intelligent interface, and it's designed to help your sales and your service teams work more productively. The old UI, everyone knows as Classic, is still available for now, and we'll talk about that a little bit further down the line as well. Lightning Knowledge has been updated. It's a new updated knowledge base within your org. Lightning Knowledge allows you to search for articles and get answers to your questions, but it also enables much more than that. With just a few short clicks, you can create a new article if there isn't one that answers the specific questions you're searching for. Lightning Knowledge also allows you to sort articles alphabetically or by publication date, and the default sort is by relevance. And depending on your permissions, you may also be able to edit, publish, or archive articles, as well as insert them directly into an email if you need to send those to someone as part of your support. Lightning Components is the modern UI framework used for developing web apps, single-page apps with dynamic and responsive user interfaces, both on the mobile and desktop devices for Lightning platform applications. That uses JavaScript on the client side and Apex on the server side. So an application framework is probably your next question. What is that? That is really a collection of code and services that make it easier for you to create your own custom apps without having to write all the code yourself. And a few examples of those web application frameworks include Ruby on Rails, AngularJS, Django, and Visual Force. The Lightning App Builder is a point-and-click tool that makes it easy to create custom pages for the Salesforce mobile app and the Lightning experience. When you edit a Lightning app from the App Manager in Setup, you're brought into the Lightning App Builder to manage the settings, where you can update the branding, the navigation, the options that your users will have, and so much more. The next item is Lightning Bolt, and Salesforce has made it easy to get customers up and running. Lightning Bolts are solution-specific partner portal templates that contain a basic setup of modules that allow users to view, modify, and create data needed for their specific industry solutions. There's more than 50 Lightning Bolts included that are available, including options for healthcare, retail, manufacturing, financial services, and more. Each Lightning Bolt contains a bundle of components, applications, processes, and templates, and they're all designed to work together. So once you have selected a Lightning Bolt, then you are free to customize it by adding apps, modifying the design, and connecting to external systems, and that's all done with clicks and not code. And you can, of course, customize the look and feel of the page to match your own company branding as well. And then last, we have the Lightning Design System. And the Lightning Design System makes it easy for you to build applications that comply with the new Salesforce Lightning look and feel, again, without having to write any CSS. And the key benefits of this, it's designed for building Salesforce apps, it's continuously updated, and accessibility is built into the CSS framework behind the components. The CSS is also namespaced with the SLDS prefix, and scoped with the SLDS scope class to avoid CSS conflicts, so that makes things easier for you. It includes 4 types of resources to help you build applications: the CSS framework or the UI components, the icons, and it also includes PNG and SVG versions of icons for actions, custom items, document types, standard and utility icons. The standard Salesforce Sans font is also included to help you maintain a consistent visual voice and personality across your application. It also includes design tokens, which are customizable variables such as colors, fonts, spacing, and sizing. And the Lightning Design System needs a modern browser to operate properly, like Chrome, Safari, or Firefox, or Microsoft Edge. If you're still using Internet Explorer, it only supports version 11 of that. So why switch to Lightning? That's the big question. First off, the newest features are only being released in Lightning, not in Classic. So if you need any of the newer functionality that Salesforce is releasing, you really don't have much of a choice but to go on to Lightning. Lightning also gives your users access to Einstein Analytics reporting, because that's only available on Lightning. Lightning also includes enhanced security, featuring Locker Service, which isolates Lightning components so they can't interact with each other directly, except through the tools provided within the framework. And probably one of the biggest things to consider regarding switching to Lightning is that support for Classic will eventually go away. It's on the verge of extinction, like the dinosaur. And also, Salesforce recently announced that in about 10 months, Lightning is going to be auto-on for users. So that's something you definitely need to consider in your planning phase, is keeping that in mind and remembering it 10 months from now, hopefully, unless you're already on Lightning by then. So how do you go about communicating and executing the change to Lightning? Well, as humans, we all know change is hard. Most of us fear change simply because it brings with it a lot of unknowns. But to overcome the fear of change, you need to get your users and your stakeholders to own the change process. They need to feel like they're involved. They need to be part of the whole process from start to finish. Now, I know that's not as easy as it sounds, but there are some tips to help overcome that. And the first thing I would suggest you do is determine what functionality is going to be affected. For example, from a sales perspective, will you be making changes to your current lead to opportunity process? or your opportunity to account process whatever happens when that deal goes from close to close won, preferably close won and not close lost. But you still need to consider both of those options. You also need to consider how order provisioning will take place. These are all very personal processes that vary widely by company based on the products or services that your company sells, your company's approval process, and thresholds and tolerances for discounts and other variables like that. But don't just stop at the sale. You know, we all consider the SaaS world, renewals are a big deal. So that's also a sales function, but don't forget about service as well. You need to support and service your customers properly. And so you have to consider how switching over to Lightning is going to impact your customer service as well. So what should you be doing once you've figured out all that? Then it's time to really build a roadmap and plan out exactly what you're going to be doing to that regard. So some things to think about when building your roadmap. The priority of the functionality that's available through Lightning, which departments will it impact, which departments will see the biggest impact and the most improvements on their productivity. You also need to look at what options are available for new functionality, if it's a must-have for your organization or if it's a nice-to-have, so you can properly prioritize those. Obviously, you want to do the must-haves first, and the nice-to-haves can be a phase 2 type of approach. But you certainly also want to consider what processes will eliminate, what improvements will eliminate a manual process. And then as part of this building out your roadmap, you're also going to want to try to identify owners within each department, the people who you can rely on to ultimately make sure that everything's going to get done and done properly. So the next thing to do to communicate the change to everyone that's going to be involved is really around setting expectations. It's not just a simple switch to turn Lightning on. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of teamwork and coordinated efforts from a lot of people. And to get all that done properly and do it so everyone is happy with what's going on, that's communication. Regular status updates involving your end users, testing the new functionality, having your end users do the testing will help them understand it and help them buy into the new functionality and the new process. And of course, you want to do your testing in the sandbox. And all of that really helps build ownership of the project, and it helps gain better user adoption once you flip the switch and move over to Lightning. So we just briefly mentioned finding people within the organization that will take charge and will help you champion the cause. Most of the time we refer to those individuals as stakeholders, and they're very important people to have. They are gonna be the ones who really champion the cause and really support it and help keep others enthusiastic about what's about ready to happen, the changes they're going to see and things like that. But one of the things that you really need to do is try to find an executive sponsor, a champion, an advocate for your whole project, someone who is fairly high up in the organization, who can share all the goodness that's about to come and all the changes that are about to come and all the good things that moving over to Lightning will bring to the organization. And if it comes from high in the organization, most of the time people will feel better about it rather than just seeing it happen after it's already happened. In the long run, the message you need to deliver is that everything being done by switching over to Lightning is being done to make your organization more efficient and more effective and operate better. So another way to help everyone feel better about the upcoming switch is to share some of the good things that are coming. As we mentioned earlier, involve your users in testing, and some of the new features that you can have them test include the Kanban view, or some people call it a Kanban board. And that gives your users a new way to visualize the records in a more intuitive manner. It allows grouping by fields that mean the most. And it's a very visual way of looking at your data. Another exciting improvement that comes along with this is the sales path. Now, the path itself, the original sales path has been around since Lightning first came out, but it's recently been enhanced to allow functionality on leads, campaigns, contacts, orders, and even custom objects. So that's an expansion from before. And the sales path basically allows you to add components to selected objects which display a business process. So it's another visual feature. And again, remember, all these new features are Lightning experience only and not available in Classic. So once you have figured out all of that, the next thing you really need to do is create an action plan and a timeline of how you're going to do this, what you're going to do in what order, and what kind of goal you have for the final outcome and the go live of being on Lightning across your organization. You need to put them in a logical order that makes sense. Obviously, you want your higher prioritized items to be done early, and keeping in mind the needs of all your departments as well as the overall impact on the organization. And of course, make sure your action plan includes time for testing and evaluating and measuring your successes. So what does measuring your successes look like, and how do you really do that? And it's easy for some things, like horse racing, for example. The success would be win, place, or show. You're in the money. In business, generally speaking, it's profits or revenue growth or sales growth. But when you're looking at success on implementation of new business processes, those measurements become a little less tangible and a little harder to find. Some of the things you might want to consider are increased efficiency. How long does it take to do something with Lightning or versus before Lightning? What types of tasks are your users currently doing, and how long does it take them to do them now before you go to Lightning is kind of your benchmark. If something your sales team is currently processing takes 5 clicks, 10 clicks or more, and when you move to Lightning, you can get that down to 1 or 2 clicks, that's what I would consider a big win. That's a lot of time savings. Some of the other things that you can measure is visibility. How much transparency is in who can see your data. Does your staff currently have a real, true 360-degree view of your customer? Do they see everything that's going on? Can your sales team see what your service team is talking to your customers about? And can your service team understand what your sales team is also talking to the customers about? The one thing that customers are not going to like is when your company seems disjointed and sales and service don't seem to follow the same messaging and understand what's going on with that particular customer. And all of that really relates to customer satisfaction, and that's another thing you can measure. How are your customers feeling about what you're doing for them today? Are they satisfied with your service? Do you have a good Net Promoter Score? How do they feel about your company's roadmap and the leadership of your company? Assuming you share those information, those kinds of things with your customers. And then also what you should do then is, after you have made the switch over to Lightning and been on it for a few months, take some more surveys of your customers and see how they're feeling now that you've switched over. Are they happier? Do they have new concerns you need to address, and things like that? One other thing to consider is not just your customer, though, but your employees, because they're certainly impacted by the change to Lightning. Obviously, if your employees are happy and they understand how their processes are now working and they realize it's better for them, that's something they're going to pass on to your customers when they're providing sales or support to them. It's an odd thing to say, but sometimes you can hear a smile on someone's face when you're talking to them, and you'll know that they're happy, and happy employees generally means more productive and happier customers. So what are the key things that you need to keep in mind while you're doing this? Obviously, running the Salesforce Lightning readiness check is a big thing that will help you highlight the Salesforce perspective of how ready you are to make the switch. Again, determine the functionality that's going to be impacted. Where do you need the improvements the most? This is, again, where you want to set priorities and get the buy-in from your champions and communicate that all through the organization. And then create your roadmap. Like we just discussed, make sure you have all the important pieces in your roadmap. And of course, test it. Test it, test it, test it. Test it in your sandbox. Make sure it's working. Involve your users in your testing. And testing is certainly one of the areas where Panaya can help with. Their Release Dynamics tool is great for you evaluating the impact of changes before you commit those changes to production. And that's something that Stuart will be showing here shortly. So what else do you need to do to prepare for the change? Gain some knowledge. Learn as much as you can about what Lightning has to offer. Trailhead has a lot of modules and badges that you can follow through. Your community probably has a user group in the area. There may be some Salesforce events in your area, community-led events or Salesforce-sponsored events like World Tours or Dreamforce. Of course, that's the big one. And then, of course, once you have your knowledge where you need it to be, and you've got all your plans laid out, and you've gone through your testing process, turn it on in production and let her rip. Let's see how things work. But you're not done then. You still need to revisit and reevaluate and make sure you're seeing the results you wanted. Follow up on your surveys with your customers and your employees to highlight areas where you may need to reevaluate and restructure things. And maybe it's just a re-education of the new processes with additional people. And then, of course, once you discover areas that need some help and some adjustment, make those adjustments. And it's a continuous cycle. You need to kind of almost always constantly go through that process of reevaluating and adjusting as needed.
Thanks, Eric, for covering all that valuable information with us today. Before we move on, I have a second poll for you guys. So again, you're going to see it pop up on your screen, and just pick one of the following answers that you'll see. The question is, which type of changes occupy the majority of your time and resources? Number 1, system maintenance. 2, implementation of minor projects and ongoing changes. Number 3, implementation of innovation projects like CPQ, Service Cloud, along with ongoing changes. And then finally, implementation of cross-company projects utilizing external budgets. So it looks like we have the answers coming in now, and it seems that with 50% and 52, it is implementation of minor projects and ongoing changes seems to be the most common. And the second one seems to be innovation projects such as CPQ along with ongoing changes. Great, so thanks everyone. Don't run off just yet. We have a short presentation by Stuart from Panaya. Stuart will be demonstrating the Release Dynamics for Salesforce platform to show how easy it is to make changes to your org, and also to test your Lightning so you can see how everything is and how ready it is for go live. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Stuart. Stuart, go ahead.
My name is Stuart Bierig. I'm the Director of Pre-Sales for the Americas region of Panaya. I want to thank Eric for his time and thank him for all of that very valuable knowledge. Just very briefly, both Eric and I probably consider ourselves dinosaurs to some degree in terms of how many years we've been exposed to the Salesforce ecosystem. And I guess we will also look back at the classic interface with fondness when eventually it does go away. But we all have to remember that it was built a long time ago, before things like the iPad even existed. And so there is a tremendous amount of value and efficiencies that can be gained by the Lightning interface, especially when you want people to use a common interface across multiple devices and browser systems. So today we're going to talk, well, for the rest of the session, we're going to talk a little bit about Panaya. Panaya has a very compelling and differentiating solution in the marketplace today. In essence, it reduces significantly the amount of time and reduces the go-live risk that Salesforce projects will typically run into. As companies, orgs become ever more complex, the risk that's associated with making even the smallest change grows, and projects seem to be taking longer and longer, and those small little tweaks and changes have a ripple effect, sometimes unintended ripple effect across many components that you didn't realize were either directly or indirectly impacted by that proposed change. So what Panaya will do is will instantly provide you with a list of anything that's impacted by the things that you are considering to change. It will also provide insight into the things that you have to test. And we have a very powerful test and defect management application that I'll show you a bit of over the next 15 minutes or so. And we also have a powerful risk mitigation tool. Now, I won't be able to demo all of these things today, but I'm going to show you some of the most compelling features and functionality in our environment. The demo, as I said, will last approximately 15 minutes. It will be linked to a demo org of mine. But we at Panaya would be more than happy to show this demo linked to your own Salesforce environment where we can, or you can, run impact analysis against proposed changes in your environment to see what those impacted components would be. So when you see some really powerful functionality over the next few minutes, just imagine what it would be like if we did that in your environment and how much time and effort and you could save, as well as how much go-live risk you can reduce. As Eric mentioned before, these are some of the key areas that we need to look at. The areas in black are going to be the ones that I focus on in the demo itself. So Eric did mention that there are key success factors to a Lightning migration, which include ease of use, better visibility of data. This is an opportunity for many Salesforce environments, or at least the analysts and administrators and developers, to look at the fields on key objects and say, well, maybe these are candidates for removal. Over time, we have sections of fields that are hardly, if ever, used. This is a perfect opportunity to review them and to say maybe we can delete them to make our Lightning interface that much more usable. We also want to talk about testing because obviously users are going to be exposed to a brand new interface, and testing is important to just guarantee that they can get their jobs done on a regular basis. So with that, I'm going to hop over to the Panaya environment. Panaya is a SaaS tool. It is very powerful. We've been around for over 12 years, providing support for ERP and now for Salesforce environments. In our homepage, I have visibility across all the different projects and the releases that they are part of. And I get real-time visibility into the risk that is associated with those projects as well as those releases. Diving into these projects and releases from a risk mitigation perspective is out of scope of today's demo. But again, it's important to understand that as tests, defects, new requirements, adding and their status changes within projects and within releases, your key stakeholders, key managers, the people that make those no-go decisions, they get instant real-time visibility into those changes, into the risk that they provide, and we could drill in and not only get powerful real-time insight, but it's actionable as well. But today, I'm going to focus on our Lightning migration effort, which is part of an overall CRM process redesign project. So let me click into that project and take a look at the requirements that have already been added in. So you can see that we're going to make some changes to our customer service, to our sales process, but we also have a Lightning related requirement to provide mobile device support. So our new VP of Sales has decided that he finally wants his team mobile enabled, and what better way is to introduce Lightning, because now they'll have the same user interface no matter where they go, and it'll just make life easier for those people that are still used to using their BlackBerries. So let's go click on that business requirement and see that the analysts and the stakeholders already populated a number of the fields for this requirement. Panaya is a very customizable environment. We can add additional fields, additional tabs, customize a tremendous amount of capabilities, including the methodologies that are supported, whether they're agile, waterfall, hybrid, etc. So for example, the name of a certain entity can actually be changed with just a few mouse clicks, declarative, just like Salesforce is. But we could see here that the business analyst has identified in our opportunity object a section of fields that may not be necessary in the Lightning environment. So again, this is an opportunity to, one, either remove them from the layouts, from the interface altogether, but let's take a step further and say, well, maybe I can delete them if they're no longer needed in my production processes. So let's take a look how we can get that done quickly within Panaya. So I'm going to go into the risk analysis field, and I'm going to add two scoped items. So you'll see here a list of all the different components that we support, and this is, by the way, growing on a monthly basis. And the first, I think, was called demo field. So I'm just going to type demo in search, and we can see here is my opportunity demo field. I'm going to add it into my scoped item. Now, this is not going to give me really powerful results, but I do this for a reason. We can see that this demo field is only referenced directly by a number of page layouts. So basically, it's a field that was, pardon the technical term, was plopped into a layout, and it's really doesn't have any additional functionality beside gathering data. So if you're using a tool like Field Trips and you see that that you're hardly even using this field anymore, it's not showing up in any reports, it's an ideal candidate for removal. Let's take a look. In this case, I won't select field. I'm going to put in that stage code. Remember, that was the second field we saw in that section in my classic interface. You'll notice that Panaya will provide you a list of all of the components across multiple types that have stage and code in it. In this case, I'm going to take the opportunity stage code field and I'm going to add it into my analysis. And this is where you're going to see some very powerful capability. Panaya will instantly provide you a list of all the other components that either directly or indirectly reference these scoped items. So you can see here that on the stage code perspective, I got Apex class that calls it directly. I have templates, email templates that are referencing that field. I have validation rules, workflow, flow, etc., a whole bunch of different things. So removing this from my environment may have that ripple effect and unintended consequences and generate go-live errors. So let's just take this a little further and let's analyze deeper. So again, the demo field was pretty straightforward. This is an ideal candidate for removal. And now by looking at stage code in our graph view, we could see that there is a depth and breadth of impact. In fact, there is another stage code field on a custom object called sales plan that directly references this opportunity stage code. And so if this is removed or is changed and this breaks, again, you could see instantly what that ripple effect can be. So I, as an analyst, would like to get a little more detail on this. So let's go to my list view. Okay. Again, here's a list of those 16 impacted components. And we're going to look very quickly at different ways that we can view this information. So first, I'm going to sort on used. So we not only extract component metadata, we don't take any business data or any transaction data, but we can also get usage metadata from your environment. And we can see that frequently used, that this is basically more than the top 20% of all used items are these two reports. Okay, notice that one is by stage code and one is active sales plan. So this automatically gives me some insight in areas that I may want to add to changes that have to occur if I'm actually going to be removing this from my interface. If they're not going to be populated, then this may have impact. So I'm going to add this to my potential change. Okay. I'm also going to sort by type. Again, we have other capabilities as well. Last time they were modified, who modified it, etc. You can see here, here's that Apex class that we showed earlier, right? Now, what is that degree of impact? You'll see that Panaya automatically will open up that Apex code, will highlight the scoped item, so it enables a developer or an analyst to instantly focus on the area within that large code to say whether this removal of this field is going to lead to a go-live error or not. So let's assume it does. Okay, let's take a look at a validation rule. Now, notice how I'm just clicking on this and I'm going directly into Salesforce, right? It takes me directly into my environment, into setup. I don't have to hop out, manually search for things, etc. Panaya enables you to drill down instantly to determine whether this is obviously going to be impacted by a proposed removal. So I could go on more and more. I could show you opening up flows and other things as well. But let me just go ahead and say that we know that we're going to be changing the sales layout and a couple of other things. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to my list of changes. So if you think about it, I had two areas that I was scoping. They identified 16 potential areas of impact. Now I can review other areas as well, and I could determine, for example, that this is not going to be part of my change. You'll just see I'm just going to mark these as reviewed or not, just so to get them out. I could add comments if I want. So there are a lot of powerful capabilities here. But now what we're going to do is just focus on the changes themselves. Okay, here are the few changes that I selected that were relative to the 16 total impacted areas. So now I can do some very powerful things here. All right, I can go look at that Apex class and I could determine that I want to assign a task to it. So I can go ahead and generate a task. We have user stories. We have different categorizations that we can leverage. And I can assign a task that covers multiple changes. I could have a change that has multiple tasks assigned to it. But again, just to move things along rather quickly, I am going to show you some testing capabilities. All right. So that's how we manage those changes. We assign them to developers. Those are unique entities. They have their own status, their own reports. So development managers can review them, move the status of this functionality from design to development, et cetera. But what Panaya also does is look at those changes and say, hey, wait a minute, if you're going to make changes to those components, well, here's some areas that you may want to test as well. All right, so let's go ahead and look at something that's very Lightning specific. Okay, here's a page layout that's going to be impacted by this. You'll notice here on the bottom that I have no tests that are covering for this project and this requirement. But if I click on the suggested test, you'll see that there is some test asset in my automated regression cycle that already is covering this. But remember, that was not built for Lightning. But you can see here I have a Lightning related test asset in my UAT, right? That's already been built and ready to go. You can see it's ready to test, but UAT hasn't started yet. Why? Because we haven't finished all the development. So let's just go ahead and go back to those suggested tests for the layout. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my test plan. You'll notice now up here where it says no coverage for this requirement. Now I have a degree of coverage. It's not complete because I have other areas that are still in scope. I may have to scope them out. My impact risk is high because I really haven't completed much. So again, you can see how risk is being changed in real time. And again, my project and release managers get insight into this later on. So now we're going to change hats and we're going to go into that testing environment. Let's just see how that works. So let's say I'm a tester. I received an email that the UAT started. I'm going to go ahead and start this, start my test. Our test tool is a thin client solution. It's a browser extension that gets added in. And I'm going to go ahead and start recording. And you'll notice just a bunch of mouse clicks and I get this little red dot blinking here. Okay. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to go test. Now, we know this test is to test the creation of an opportunity in the Lightning environment. All right. So this is my my dev org that I create for my demonstrations. I'm going to click on the opportunity tab on the top. I'm going to click new. Okay, I'm going to give it an amount. It's $1 million opportunity. We'll call it Test Lightning. We need to assign it to an account. We'll just choose the first one that's here. Stage is required. Just make it here. And let's go ahead and just add some description here. Test for demo. And I believe I've covered all of my required fields. Let's just, for giggles, just add one more. Let's go ahead and hit save. Okay, oh, you see, I skipped something. Let's go ahead and add a close date. So now I created it, and now it looks like it's working. Despite the fact that I removed some fields, despite the fact that I moved things around, my basic sales process is working as designed. I'm going to stop this test, say it's passed, say my comments is love Lightning. This is my tester who's getting excited in UAT. And that was it. So if you think about it, what did I do as a tester? I did not copy anything. I didn't paste anything. I didn't go to a Word document template or a spreadsheet, etc. And if I hop back into Panaya, and I could either wait, you notice that I didn't even click refresh. You can see it was marked as passed. There were additional steps. Those people would be notified automatically. And the most powerful thing about this test environment is that the evidence is generated behind the scenes automatically. This is very high quality. It shows me where I was, where I logged in. I clicked on the opportunity link. Every single thing I did, step by step, it shows. You can see there's that error message that I received. And again, screenshots are taken along the way. So you can see here, this is where I added the stage field. If I go back a step, you'll see that that's where I selected my account, etc. So again, it not only is telling me in text what happened, but it also is giving me very compelling screenshots. And this can be exported to PDF. It's audit quality. It could be exported to Word. This is a great way to build training materials for your user community who needs to learn a whole new user interface to Salesforce. So again, very, very powerful test capability. And again, we just are scratching the surface of this environment. So with that, I am going to just summarize and just say that Panaya, again, provides a very powerful tool from a scoping perspective, from an analysis perspective, as well as robust test and defect management capabilities. The fact that you can get instant impact analysis for any proposed change with your environment is extremely valuable. Those simple declarative tweaks that your management is asking for to meet agile business requirements are typically not as simple as they think it is under the hood. And this gives you the ability not only to identify that in real time, but to drill in one by one, identify your scoped items, which one should be changed, assign tasks, test, complete, and then provide that visibility to your key stakeholders. Thank you for your time for this demo.
All right, thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Eric, for leading the webinar. Before you leave, we have a final poll. If anybody is interested in seeing a personalized demo for the Panaya Release Dynamics product, then go ahead and select the yes option. All right, thank you, everybody, for joining. We hope you enjoyed both presentations. Thanks for attending, and we hope you have a good rest of your day.